Welcome to Elevating Job Quality, a podcast from the Aspen Institute's Economic Opportunities Program. Today, we're taking you inside a dialogue from the Shared Success Project, exploring how CDFIs or community development financial institutions can help their small business clients create good jobs so that workers, business owners, and local economies all thrive. Coming up, a conversation about some of the challenges and opportunities with job quality in the childcare sector. Maureen Conway, Executive Director of the Aspen Institute's Economic Opportunities Program, speaks with Jataune Hall, Director of Special Projects and Partnerships at Micro Enterprise Services of Oregon, and Lamont Jackson, Director of Technical Assistance with the Black Business Investment Fund.
Welcome, Lamont, Jataune. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about shared success, how we build job quality into small businesses. And in particular, today we're going to be talking about what that looks like when we're working with childcare businesses and why this is important in the childcare sector. Jataune, let me just start with you. MESO has a real strong focus on childcare. Why did you choose to focus on childcare in your job quality work?
That is an excellent question. Although we work with several different entities and businesses, we really in particular chose the childcare industry because there's so much around that area right now, where we have a program back at home called Preschool for All, and they're providing additional fundings, that is taxpayers' funds, to really pour into the childcare need because we know it's a very needed role as an essential workers. If you don't have somewhere you can take your kids to or so you can go to work, you're not going to work. You're going to be home with the kids, right? And you want to make sure you have great establishments that can really meet the needs of your child in order for you to feel confident leaving them for about 8 to 9 hours a day and to go and do what you need to do, but also have a break for yourself as well. And then come on back and pick up your child and go home and cook dinner, what the case might be. So for us, it was a very urgent need to really pour into the childcare providers, for them to understand for themselves that they are a business and not just someone who's taking care of kids. I think a lot of times the childcare industry really just kind of make it more so, it's really not about us. It's really about the children that we're serving. We love doing what we do. But at the same time, they need to understand it's a business at the end of the day. So we got to also follow protocols to make sure that you're putting children in the best environments and having the great successes that they need as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I will appreciate that so much. How did that work out for BBIF in terms of the focus on childcare?
So one of the things that really kind of drove us to focus in on childcare early on was that we were noticing 5, 10, 15 years ago that most of the businesses that were coming to us for loans were childcare providers. And so there was a explosive growth childcare providers in the Central Florida community. And so we wanted to start, we have our monthly meetings of our clients, where we have it broken down by industry. And our childcare, daycare is our biggest group. They had 15 childcare providers in the group. And we were able to connect with some of the organizations that provide ancillary services to childcare providers, like ELC, which is the Early Learning Coalition, BLI, which is the Business Learning Institute. Those are training vehicles and resource partners that we were able to tap into to help our childcare owners really grow their business, really connect them to other resources that will allow them to tackle some of the challenges though they have that are specific to their industry. So, we wanted to continue with that and continue to provide resources. So again, that's going to be our continuous focus, even in the job quality space. In our next cohort, we're going to have just daycare providers, because we know that that's a growing opportunity for us to really engage and the importance of that, of those organizations to the community is instead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you to say a little bit more about that, because that's actually great that you had lots of childcare businesses coming in. So many places, really struggle with a lack of childcare in their communities. So how did you all think about that and talk about that when you were, considering the needs of these businesses? How did you, because childcare businesses aren't the only kinds of businesses BBIF works with, but how did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, when you start to kind of segment how you provide services to business owners, especially from a technical assistance standpoint, you want to understand how do you drill down to what is really specific for the business and connected to industry. And so as we started to build these relationships with the Early Learning Coalition, with the BLI, we realized that this is a really, I think one time the BLI had 25 graduates in a program. So, and that was just in one area. BLI now is expanding. The Early Learning Coalition has expanded throughout Florida. So we see that there is significant growth in that industry. There's significant opportunity, and the majority of those owners are Black women, to minorities and minorities. And so those are two major areas that we really can focus on.
Jataune, how did you think about the importance of supporting childcare businesses in the context of the broader business community that you so support?
For us, it was pretty much very similar to Lamont and his organization. Even more so, I think when we started off with childcare, which we've been doing forever now, but more so with this particular project, we started off with about maybe 40 to 50 clients. Today, we're at almost 100 clients in just the childcare industry. And so we actually have to step back a little bit after reviewing and evaluating the clients that we have been serving under our contract, understanding what their needs were. But then there was still a huge gap of those who want to start in the childcare industry and what to do and how to get started. So that brought us to opening up our very own MESO Childcare Business Academy, where we now are able to walk someone brand new in the industry through what it means to be in the world of the childcare industry. So within that, it's a 6-month cohort where we really establish you as a business. And by the time that we get done with that, you should be up and running in your business, which now feeds into the pipeline of the other industry where it's preschool for all, because we're constantly needing more and more providers to provide the services for that organization. So we're looking at it from the big picture of childcare is not going away. Mm-hmm. But what we can do is make sure that the new ones that are coming in have the same playing field as those who've been around for 20 plus years and have the very understanding of what it means to be in this industry. It's not about the money. It's really about your desire to really work with kids and help them to grow. And when you see them as adults later, you can have that joy of knowing I was their first impression as a teacher for them to be where they are today. And that's what really makes it really worthwhile for us, is just seeing them, having their eagerness to get into it. And let's be honest, the childcare world is not for everybody. You got to have patience. You got to have understanding. You also got to know who is the boss in the household. And sometimes it's not the parent. Sometimes it might be the child who runs things. So how do you actually get to them, as well as have an understanding for the parent or grandparent or whoever it is that person is that's really helping raise this child, but having a mutual understanding amongst everybody to bring that whole picture to life as far as helping this child go to that next mile.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's huge.
I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about something you started with, because I think it's so important with childcare, that whole family dynamic and everything. And yet you said, but childcare providers have to remember they're running a business.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering if you could just talk about the ways you think about how you provide your business support services to childcare providers who maybe have some specific needs. Like, what are the specific needs that they have, but also how you kind of help them navigate that? Because it's a real challenge, right? When, your heart's going out to the kids, but you have to remember you're running a business. Like, what does MESO do to sort of help those business owners with that dynamic?
That is an excellent question. We start at the beginning. So in order for you to say you're a business, you should also be licensed as a business. So state registration for your business. But then also what people don't consider is having a separate bank account for your business. If you want the bankers to take you seriously as being a bank or being a business, you got to show that. And so you can't have your personal banking account mixed in with your business account and expect even a CDFI to really be able to support you when you come now later on for a loan. There has to be 2 separate accounts. That's the starting point that we teach everybody up front. From there, it's also just having that hands-on support, but then also utilizing your staff. If you want to grow, and not every organization wants to grow, some of them are like, I'm okay with being a family-based center in my home. I don't want to go beyond that. I have a wait list that's 2 years out. At the same time, I'm not looking to grow. And I was like, but why? You are obviously what people are looking for because you have all the tools. So how can we help you expand? How can we help you go beyond just being the in-home? Well, how do we get you to that center-based environment? If that's your desire. Now, some want to go that direction, others do not, and I understand that. But how do we help you to even teach others? So if each one teach one, that's going to make the overall environment of childcare so much stronger. And that's where MESO comes in as well. We actually have opportunities where we will bring in a panel of childcare providers, and they get to teach and talk about their experiences live with others upcoming and others who actually make the decisions when it comes to state regulations. We just ask them to be in the room so they can hear straight from the mouths of those providers of what their barriers are, what they're facing, how can they help overcome those things. And they can also share their story of being able to say, I started off very small in the home base, and after realizing that it's not as difficult to go into a center, it does require a lot more money, a lot more employees, but I actually have the right support to get there. I can now pass this business on to the next generations to come, to my son, my daughter, to their grandchildren and beyond. But it's because we started the foundation, and it was a strong foundation because of the support that we've received in order to make it that strong.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much in that answer that it's just thinking about. But there's 2 things I'm going to ask you, Lamont, to maybe build on them from your perspective and how it works in Florida. So one was just you talked about creating community among childcare providers and helping them learn from each other as well as learn from experts and others. But you also talked about connecting them with the policymakers and, sort of a 2-way conversation on this policy environment, right? So policymakers can understand their context and sort of what it makes sense for them, and they can understand what's going to be asked of them from policymakers. And we know childcare is always going to be regulated, right? We hear, we're going to have rules for where we leave our little ones. So Lamont, I'm wondering if those are issues that have come up for you in the work that you do with childcare providers, and also if you would point to others.
Yeah, I think that, there are some policy issues and things that are focal points for all of our childcare, daycare workers, providers. They have to make sure they focus in very specific things. Like if they want to do lunches or food service program, things like that. There are some policies and things that they have to make sure that they're adhering to when it comes to that. Of course, the licensure, but that's important, making sure you have the licensing in place and making sure that, one of the things that's important for childcare providers, especially if you have a facility, is you have to have your ratios right. So, and that's your money maker as well. Yep. So you got to make sure that you understand how, if I got, if my ratio is 4-to-1 or 5-to-1, depending on if it's infants or, preschool, whatever, you make sure you understand that and that you are adhering to whatever the policies that are in place because that can take you and put you into a problem situation. Mm-hmm. If the Department of Child Labor comes in, or if she got the name of the Department of Florida Department, whatever it is, comes in. I can't think of the name right now, but they come in and they want to, do a facility check, and they see that this classroom has a ratio that's out of whack. There's more kids in there than, teachers, and that's a problem. Right. And that can shut you down. Mm-hmm. Now you're putting your overall operations in jeopardy. So you have to really be cognizant of those things. Exactly. So then you have those problems that you don't And so you really have to pay attention to those things and making sure that, labor laws and all those things are in place that you
Yeah, great. I'm wondering for the business that you're working with on job quality, sort of how you think about what the job quality issues are in the childcare industry and what kinds of improvements you've been able to see some of the childcare businesses you work with make.
So one of the things that we specifically try to do is when it came to job quality, we wanted to look at those businesses that we'd had enough conversation about workforce issues and HR issues that, okay, these are prime businesses. We want to have a deeper dive conversation into how we help them better understand recruiting, retention, onboarding, things like that. We can really now dive into that. So for the daycare folks, it was heavy turnover, which is, it's unfortunately is in most cases low wage. Most of them don't have benefits that they can provide as that extra care for someone coming and work for them. So, understanding how do we help you tackle some of those things? So having those conversations around, okay, do you have enough wherewithal from a financial perspective to maybe offer some basic benefits? What does that look like? And how does that impact, so what about, when you bring somebody on, what's their path? What does it look like? Do you bring them on and just say, okay, this is your classroom and that's it? Or do you give them some structure that can help them understand how I be a teacher, how I might be a good teacher, and what that means in terms of if I'm doing well, are there opportunities for me to grow, and what does that look like? And then the other part of it is helping them understand policy and procedures. So we real quickly had one of our clients that's been with us for a long time. She came to us 7-8 years ago. And when she initially came, she came for a loan. We gave her a micro loan for $50,000 that she was new childcare work business out of Jacksonville. And she got to the point where she was frustrated and she said, quit. And so we spent a lot of time kind of working with her and helping her understand that, just because you worked in this area and you have this history, that doesn't mean that you understand how to be a good business owner. And so you need to start to look at some of those foundational things that help you become a better business owner. And that will take stress off of you. And now you can focus in on how to grow that business. And now she has 3 locations in Jacksonville.
Wow.
And she just topped the $1 million in sales.
Well, that's good.
So,
So, and I love that you came in with an example because I was going to come back to that. So, Jataune, how do you think, what kinds of job quality elements have you been working on with your businesses?
Very similar to Lamont. It's very important that they understand procedures. And we really put a lot of time, energy into that area. So we put our HR hat on to really help dive into some of the issues that we're hearing providers say that they, in order to help assist them in making those problems no longer problems or barriers, but they have now overcome those and now they can move on and strive. So of course, financing is always one of the hardest ones. A lot of lenders, traditional lenders, I will say, have a very hard time funding childcare businesses because of their structural style. And it becomes complicated, especially if they're in home and they want to do repairs and it's a home that they own. A lender looks at it as this is not really a business because it's out of your home. And so how do we really fund it? And they're trying to figure out all the different dynamics all the different dimensions of it. And it becomes extremely difficult. When it comes to CDFI, we have the ability to fund it. But again, we also make sure that they're stable as a business and they have their business stuff in place. So that's really important for us. So we take a lot of time, energy, and effort in helping these businesses really identify as a business by helping them have things in place, whether it's their financials and how they're paying out payroll. Some people are paying under the table. And it's like, ooh, you can't pay under the table in the childcare business. That got to be on the table. So let's help you figure that out. Whether it's QuickBooks, whether it's a payroll company, whatever that might look like, we want to make sure you're doing it on the table. Because the moment you do it under the table and there become questions are being asked, you don't have a way to say that you've actually done legit things as a business. And that includes paying payroll taxes. And that becomes an issue and barrier for a lot of businesses where they're coming for loans to pay that off. And then we ask the question of, wait, the money that's coming into your business, how's it going back out? So we're that organization that we don't have a problem digging into your books with you because we got to know where your money is coming from. But more so, we want you as a business owner to understand where your money is coming in and how it's going back out the door. And does it make sense for your business? Perfect example of that. We've had a client who is constantly asking for loans. And when you look at the overall, their overall like paperwork showing like what they bring in, we start asking, why do you need this loan? And it's more so, some parents haven't made their payments yet. So you don't really need a loan. You actually need to have the parents pay what they owe. And then you wouldn't need what you're asking for, right? And then maybe it's not as much as you're asking for. At the end of the day, when we look at the financial statements, if you're asking for a loan as well, how do we know that you're going to be able to pay back the loan? Or is it going to put you further in debt? As an organization at MESO, that's the last thing that we're willing to do, is to put you in a place where we know you can't get out of, even with our help. So we're going to ask these tough questions. We're going to dive deep with you so you can also see. And honestly, a lot of times people realize that, I am making a lot of money. Where is my money? And I'm like, I can't tell you because I'm not the one taking it. So you got to go and figure that out. Or they're cashing out their employees, whether that could be their own children, more than what they're actually working. And how do you make that, make it make sense, right? And so we're now helping them to identify, hey, if that child did not work, they don't get paid. So if they really want this extra money, you got to remind them that mom is not just your financial institution. Mom is a business. If you want to get paid, you got to actually come into work and do the work in order for you to get paid out, just like every other employee. At this moment, you're not my child, you're an employee. And that's a hard conversation to have, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of family dynamics there.
Yes.
Remove the family from the business is what I'll have to say.
Yes.
Yeah. So last question for you both. The childcare, it's such an important issue in so many communities, and many CDFIs work in this space. Is there one thing that you've learned as you brought more of a job quality lens to the work you do with your childcare businesses that you would want to share with other CDFIs as they try to do this work?
I think that one of the critical things is to make sure that these daycare, childcare owners understand that this is a business, and that part of that business is not just dealing with the child or dealing with parents, but it's also making sure that you understand how do you deal with your employees, making sure that they're good, making sure that you can bring in folks that's going to enhance your ability to deliver on whatever your service promise is as a child care facility. And it starts with you having a strong understanding of who you are, what your services that you're going to provide, and then having an understanding of who you need to bring on and make sure that you can make that happen. And that starts with really understanding the employees that you bring and making sure that they're good, making sure that they feel like they're involved, making sure that they feel like they're a part of your organization, and that they're willing, if you do all those things, then you make your organization sticky and they're willing to stay. And then helps you even more so in terms of building what I call bench strength in your organization.
I love it. I would add to that, having a pathway. So if you're going to have employees, they want to, make sure their voices are heard. And when an employee is not heard, they feel isolated, they feel disconnected, and that makes them question, why are they with your business, right? And so if we provide them with opportunities where their voice can also be heard and they can be a part of the change that happens within the organization, it makes them more invested in retaining them as employees. In addition to that, I always like to ask providers, what does your business, or how is your business different from others who do the same services or similar services to you? What makes you stand out? So it could be we only offer organic food, or when it comes to our employees, based on their educational models, and if they continue on with their early childcare education, then they can actually increase their pay over the course of time. These are all things that's going to help them want to say, oh, let me do the work so that I can get paid more on a daily basis. But as well as what's the ideal of maybe branching out and open up new locations? Well, if I have to open a new location, there should be a manager on site at each location. So now that's a pathway for that person that you're hiring to know that, hey, in a year or even maybe 6 months, depends on, the need and the nature, I could actually be in the manager role in this organization. So now I feel empowered, I feel heard, and I feel like I can really take this on and really shine. And now make sure that, of course, I'm a very competitive person. So if I was given that opportunity, I'm going to always make sure that whatever location I'm overseeing is going to be the best of all the locations, right? And so that's what the people are like feeding into. So if you can get some people who are really standing behind the business and can really say, I want to be seen as the manager, I want to be seen as a voice that is heard, and I actually make a difference in the business, they're 10 times likely to stay with the organization and be a very strong support to where maybe one day they become an overall director that oversees multiple locations. And that makes the owner's job much, much easier.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you both. I love how you both, in different ways, talked about the need to engage, listen, and really make the workers feel part of the business. And that's a growth strategy that really does lead to shared success, as we say. So thank you both so much. Really appreciate the work that you do in your communities. It's so important. And thank you for spending some time with us, Angela.
Thank you for having us.
That was Jataune Hall, Director of Special Projects and Partnerships at Micro Enterprise Services of Oregon, and Lamont Jackson, Director of Technical Assistance with the Black Business Investment Fund, in conversation with Maureen Conway, Executive Director of the Aspen Institute's Economic Opportunities Program. If you enjoyed this episode of Elevating Job Quality, please subscribe or share this conversation. The Shared Success demonstration is managed by the Aspen Institute's Economic Opportunities Program and supported by a 4-year investment from the Gates Foundation. See as.pn/shared success to learn more. Views expressed here are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect positions or policies of the foundation.